Welcome to the Strategic Life Podcast, episode 88, Devout in Doubt, with your host, Coach Mario.
Dr. Mario.
Along with Frank.
And a very special guest we have here today. We are here with Paul Baldwin, and I'm going to send this over to Dr. Mario in the doctor's corner because I don't want to do. I want the best intro from my man Paul here.
Oh, good God.
Go ahead, Dr. Mario. Give him.
No pressure, man. No pressure.
Give him the sauce.
Dude, he is a friend. He is a father. He is a pastor. He's a leader. He is an author, a business coach, and just an all-around great guy. His primary work has been investing in hungry leaders who have a deep desire to have a big kingdom impact in their immediate context. He holds undergraduate degree in sociology and organizational management and a master's degree in education and counseling from Cal Poly State University. He is currently working on his master's degree, global leadership from Fuller Seminary. Come on now. And he served as a consultant, a coach, and church planter across the United States. I am so excited about this book. You more important than the book. The book is you. Welcome to the Strategic Life Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is fun so far.
Excellent.
Enjoying it. Thanks
So
for having
far.
me. So far, yeah.
We have an hour to change things around.
Awesome.
So let's start with our title just to get it out there. Devout in Doubt. That is the name of the book, diving into deeper devotion. What made this happen?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to write a book. I'm actually working on two others. But in July of 2020, I was diagnosed with cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, and my whole world just came to a screeching halt. And it was, if you know the date, it was during COVID.
What is that?
COVID. Yeah, you can Google it, and you'll learn all about it. So March of 2020, we came down with COVID, and the whole world shut down. And in July, just about the time some of us were getting ready to go back to our offices and go back to work, I was diagnosed with cancer. Long, messy story, but just felt some pain in my abdomen, decided to check myself into the emergency room. And within 12 hours, they're like, you're not going anywhere. I was diagnosed with cancer 7 days later on my 49th birthday. On that day, they handed me a piece of paper that said I had cancer and I was going to start chemo the very next day. Wow. So all within 7 days, the whole world just kind of shut down for my wife. And I had to tell her that I had cancer on the phone, which really kind of stunk. And then we were quarantined. Nobody could kind of come in and out. I was in the hospital. So for the next 3 or 4 months, I was in and out of the hospital in quarantine, going through pretty radical chemotherapy, and it was pretty advanced. They said it was borderline between 3 and 4, stage 3 and 4, pretty aggressive cancer, pretty aggressive treatment that came with it. And so, I'm a pastor. I'm an executive pastor in a large church here in Miami, about 4,000 people. Wow. And the big question was, how do we communicate with the church in a way that lets them know, that we communicate some transparency, but at the same time, we protect the privacy of myself, my wife, and my kids. To be really honest, we just didn't need or want people showing up on our door. We really needed our space to kind of deal with this. So our communications director set up a the Caring Bridge site. Okay, it's a website for people who are sick or in the hospital. It's just kind of a way to communicate with people. So she set up this Caring Bridge site, and it was just a way to communicate with people, saying, "Hey, here's how I'm doing today. Here's how I'm doing tomorrow. Here's how I'm doing the next day." And those posts just took on a life of their own, and to the tune of close to 10,000 people around the world. Wow. that were following this blog post, and we were just simply trying to keep people out of our hair while at the same time communicating exactly what was going on with our lives. And about halfway through this our treatment, someone suggested that I put this into a book form. And I ignored that the first couple of times because I just wasn't in any condition. I mean, mentally, physically, I was spent. I was just done. But part of the way I went through therapy was just to write and attach words to to my thoughts and emotions. And so, but we had enough people that came and just said, "Hey, would you consider putting that into a book?" So I called a friend of mine up in Notre Dame, Indiana, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" He said, "Let me connect you with a publisher." And within a week, the editing board came back and said, "Man, we really love this. We'd love to turn this into a devotional book." And we started to format the thing. And the title came while I was just on a walk one day. I was just having my spiritual time with God, and just felt like this was good. Devout in Doubt. What does it look like to maintain your faith, maintain your integrity, maintain your posture when the whole world seems like it's falling apart? So that's the 4-minute version of it.
Thank you for the Cliff's Notes. On the Devout in Doubt. No, that's amazing. So what I'm hearing is that a lot of people went into COVID and the pandemic and came out with babies, and your baby was the book.
That's right.
And your baby was the book.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's at this point, especially after having 3 children, I'd rather come out with a book too.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to hear, from what happened, what came out of it.
Yeah.
And
it was just it was an opportunity. And again, we've been getting feedback now all over the world from people that there's a convent down in Colombia that has reached out and said, "Hey, we've been praying for you, we've been cheering for you, we've been I have no idea who these people are and how they got connected with the message of the book and the heart of it." And so we're just rolling with it. I'm a surfer at heart, and so it's a wave that came that I'm jumping on, and I'm gonna ride that and just seek that opportunity.
So you're originally from California.
Yep.
And how did you end up in Miami?
So originally from Southern California, little fishing, surfing village called Morro Bay, California. And I ended up in Miami by way of Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana. And so I was a part of a youth ministers network. I was the director of operations at California Polytechnic State University, Cal Poly. And as someone had just heard about me, and they said, "Would you be interested in coming out and work with our youth at a pretty large church outside of Chicago?" And said no several times. And they invited me to come out and just meet the team. And honestly, we went out there to shut the guy up because he was relentless. And my wife said, "Man, we'll just get a free trip to Chicago. Let's go. We've never been." That was our motivation. We were somewhat intrigued, and we went out there and just fell in love with the place. Spent 13 years there, planted 2 churches, ran their outreach ministry, and then a mutual friend of myself and the lead pastor at Miami Vineyard contacted me when they were looking for an executive pastor. And for your audience, an executive pastor is just a chief operating officer, someone who runs the operations and the finances. And I had a conversation with him, and 30 days later, we were down interviewing, and 30 days later, we were down in Miami working. And so been here for the last seven and a half years.
Wow. So rewinding back a little bit, as you talk about Devout in Doubt, when people enter crisis, and here in Neurostrategic Coaching and Christ Center International, our ministry, we have obviously worked with a lot of individuals, have had advanced trauma, PTSD, women who have been illegally sexually trafficked. We've been on some missions to East Africa and helping in those endeavors to restore the minds and souls of women who have gone through those difficult times. We know that there are people of faith that when you talk about doubt, they kind of, may put on a mask, if you will, or say, well, how can I be a man or a woman of faith and have doubt? It doesn't equate. But I think that's not a human process that is real. I think that's like a false self, if you will. Talk to me about when you talk about doubt, how can doubt be a good thing?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things we say, and I say in the book, is that doubt doesn't have to divide your faith. It doesn't even have to divide the sense of other than that we have. Because at some point, your consciousness travels beyond what is definable, right? And you can't define it. It becomes unexplainable, and for a lot of people, that's really difficult to wrestle with, when I can't attach language to something that I don't understand. And so one of the things that I really wrestled with was that doubt doesn't have to divide your faith. It can actually be a stepping stone. It can actually be a stepping stone into deeper faith. It can be a stepping stone to get on that platform and actually dive into deeper faith. And that's, that's where we got the beautiful cover and all of that. And so doubt is actually a doorway to ask questions, if you will allow yourself to ask those questions.
There you go.
Right? If you will keep that conversation open and not close it off. And so many people walk away, and I think they miss an opportunity for deeper understanding, deeper comprehensive vision to what could be in front of them if they would just keep that conversation open. And this really applies to any area of leadership or any context, really, that if we can just keep that dialogue open, we don't have to agree with each other to be with each other, but let's keep the dialogue open and let's continue to seek to understand. And that's what, to me, that's the tool that doubt can be in any area of life, but certainly in our faith, right? Let's just keep that conversation open. We don't fully understand everything yet, but let's continue to ask questions because I believe the better and best version of myself is on the other end of that.
Wow.
Right?
That's powerful.
I think even as you go into the conversation about defining doubt, your phone rings. And I think that when you're going into doubt, that's exactly what has to happen. You have to answer the call that's being brought to you. You have to rise out of that doubt, and that's showing what you need to do. And it's how are you going to respond when negative things happen? Because, they always say there's a few things that are guaranteed in life, and that's death and paying taxes and all that. But there will be some times when you doubt yourself, and that is the time you need to answer the call within yourself to get out of it, because it's about how you respond completely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in my answer, with the answer I just gave you, Dr. Mario, it sounds clean and tidy. And even in the book, I even say right up front in the book, there are 49 different entries, but there's another 160 days where I didn't write. And those days, I was struggling. I was either emotionally spent, or physically, I had nothing to give. And so the book is kind of a time lapse. And so when you look at a time lapse, it all seems clean and tidy, right? But there were quite a few days where I was, frankly, just pissed off at God, or at least wrestling and saying, I don't understand what's going on here. But again, the key element of doubt and how it can be a tool to open up your imagination for what maybe God is doing, or maybe what you need to learn about yourself, is simply there's two different. I could have said, God, what are you doing? Right? And that's a posture we often have when tragedy strikes us. God, what are you doing? Another posture, and I did have that. Right? Another posture is, okay, God, what are you doing? Right? Two different tones, two different postures. God, what's happening here? Or God, what are you up to? And I have a choice. I can either go through this experience, because either way, I'm not going to avoid this experience. Cancer is not going away. I can't wish it away. I can't hope it away, right? And so I can either go through this experience or I can grow through this experience, right? I can either go through it or I can grow through it. And that sounds, again, very clean and very tidy, and I didn't get from point A to point B overnight. But I really believed, God, there is something on the other end of this conversation, right? I believe the better and best version of who I've been made to be is on the other side of this conversation. It may suck between here and there, and it did. On most days it did. It was the most miserable experience, and I'm sure you guys know folks that have gone through chemo and just the nastiness of it. I mean, literally, think about it. They're injecting poison into your body to kill all the bad things, but it also kills all the good things. And then they backfill it with all sorts of medicine to try to keep it balanced.
Right.
It's just it's a rather marvelous and almost perverse process. But that I do believe the better version of Paul Baldwin is on the other end of this thing. And so it leads me to a place where I'm like, I can't wait to see what else I discover. I hope I don't go through something like this again. But it does give me a new imagination for learning and for exploring and to see what else is out there that I can learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as you said that story, a lot of things went to mind. I think the first thing that we do is when we doubt anything, it's just because we have forgotten the things that we are certain of.
Sure.
Right? Because at the end of the day, that is the opposite of what doubt is, right? It's having certainty. Hey, this is something I don't know, or I'm not familiar with, or I've never experienced. And the opposite of that is, I have knowledge in it, I have experience in it. But that's very difficult with things that you don't see. Now, why does that bring me back? Because then it comes down to specifically the religion part. A lot of people will say, well, what is happening to me and all that. The doubt is the what and who, right? What is happening to me? Who is happening to me? Why is this person affecting those kind of things? What you should be certain about is the how and why it's happening to you. So for you, Paul, was it at any point, now that you know, hey, what happened? Cancer, right? Who did it affect? You. But now then on the other side is how and why. How did you overcome that and why did you overcome that? At any point did it hit you, hey, this is part of my journey to help others understand things, to teach others understand things, because the why is something that we create. So at what point was it that it hit you with, this is why I have to do this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, let me answer it this way. So I'm 51 years old. This happened when I was 49 years old. When I was 38 years old, I went through another medical thing. I'm really not broken here, guys. But
Nobody said that.
when this happened when I was 38, I remember. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I'm gonna go ahead and admit it. That I went to God and I'm like, why is this happening after everything I've done for you? Now, I didn't actually say that language, but my posture was that. After everything I've done, I've been serving, I've given my life to the church, I've given my life to nonprofits, I've been giving my life to making the world a better place, and this is how you repay me? I'd never say that. And none of us would ever say that, but my posture was that. In other words, I was physically surprised by my illness, but I was spiritually unprepared to go through it. Fast forward to my 49th birthday when I found out I had cancer. Very, very different posture. I was physically surprised that this was happening. We have no cancer in the family, no history of it at all. Physically surprised, but spiritually very prepared this time, right? And so you go through the natural emotions because, my wife is thinking, oh my God, for the second time in my marriage, I may lose my husband. My kids are thinking, are we going to lose dad? So you go through all of those emotions. But spiritually, we were at a place where we're like, okay, something's going on here. This doesn't make sense. And, we live in a fallen world. There's sickness. It just happens. And so we quickly discovered the why, primarily with our children. I remember the second day I told my wife, I said, how we respond to this tragedy will really impact our kids. All of our kids are young adults, and how they see their dad and how they see their mom go through tragedy. And it won't be the last tragedy, right? We all go through tragedy. Will be a discipling, will be a forming, it'll be a shaping experience for my kids. So that was our first why. And the second why came as we started getting feedback from all of the different people around the world. And I looked at my wife and I said, wouldn't it be crazy if the Lord trusted us enough with this tragedy so that we could be a ministry, so that we could be a benefit, so that we could be a help to people we've never met and may never meet around the world. And that was kind of fueling. It was a ridiculous thought. And so we embraced it and we went for it. Did we have bad days? Absolutely. I mean, come on, man, you're human and you're getting, but there were days where I would wake up and go, okay, what am I going to tell this audience today? So the why began with our kids, and then it kind of fanned out to, our church, and then people around the world that we have never met. probably will never met.
See, and that's the free will that we have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the free will that, hey, God gives us. God gives you free will. You do which way that you want. And that's assigning why you do things or who you do things with. That's your free will. It's not just, well, I get to wake up and I choose to do this. It's the why you choose to do that really matters.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in coaching a lot. What is your why? What is your higher intent? What is your purpose? And what is your calling? And as we look at historical, theological writings, we see men and women of God who obviously had issues and whose friends abandoned them, cursed them.
Yeah.
And even a spouse was saying, why don't you deny God? What I'm hearing from you is that as you went through your episode, you had a different result. You had many people who reached out. And perhaps it was great that you set that healthy boundary. And of course, your circumstances were different because of that thing called COVID. It happened sometime back in our lifetime. But who were the people that were closest to you other than family? Who were your spiritual mentors? Who came to give you a word that gave you hope and inspiration?
Yeah, I've got a real good friend who, from my Notre Dame South Bend days, who actually came into a relationship with me just in the most peculiar way. But he's become a lifetime friend, and he's not a pastor. He's not a prophet. He's not a he works in IT and in business management at Notre Dame University, and he was probably my most consistent life giver when it comes to other human beings in my life. A couple of guys in small group in our church would text daily. A couple of guys from high school 35 years ago would daily check in with me, and not from different faiths, from different faiths, and but there was this common connection of spirituality that we've talked about before, and they would check in and just be like, how are you doing? Of course, my pastor Kevin, he would check in with me and how are you doing? Kevin Fisher, yeah, our lead pastor at the Vineyard. And so there were probably 5-6 people that would constantly check in, and there's a lot of life-giving energy that comes from just checking in. And I'm thinking about you. It doesn't take much. Like when you're at the absolute bottom, just a little bit of light is helpful.
Yeah,
and I'm a pretty positive guy too. I'm a pretty glasses half full kind of guy, and but this was rather depleting.
So let me ask you this. I think a lot of times when people really get pushed up against their boundaries in life, when there's a traumatic event, when there's something that they would define as stressful in their lives, people find and people lose religion, I believe. There's people who've never believed in God, and something's happening. I don't know, they're in a car accident, they're rolling down a mountain, and as though God help me, they find religion real fast. Whether they've had exposure to it or not. And then the opposite, I think, for some of those people of faith, where they start to question, like, why is this happening to me and whatnot. What would you say? I need 3 keys to success right now on how to, but what would you say when you were maybe at your lowest, maybe coming off of a few days of not writing or whatnot, even maybe in this book? What was something you took away or a learning you got at that point that would help you move forward?
Yeah.
When someone's at that level.
Yeah, I think that when you are we don't realize how dependent we are on so many different things, right? And when you're stripped of absolutely everything, like the dignity is completely gone, right? And you've got absolutely nothing left to reach for that will give you any kind of peace or hope or anything that will minimize the pain. You've got nothing else. I think that's what really tests where your faith is. So for me, Scripture the ancient scriptures talk about this all the way throughout Scripture, that suffering is a powerful mechanism, right? That in your suffering, you're more open to receive and to tap into things that are outside of your own understanding and outside of your control, right? I call it the other than, right? You can't categorize it, you can't name it, you can't label it, and you're more open to receive something spiritual. And why is that? I believe that we are created people, and I believe that we are spiritual people. And so when you hear about people having out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences, they immediately gravitate to whatever faith system connects with them the most. And so so for me, I would say if I were to put a formula into it, I would say...
If you were asked.
If I was asked, I would say lean in. Right? Lean in. You don't have to understand it all, right? Lean in and keep it open, right? And then lean in again and then ask questions. So I would say lean in, ask questions, lean in even further, ask questions. Do not back away from what it is that you're experiencing. Again, and I'm not necessarily talking about faith in God, although that is my system, that is where I lean, that is where I have found my hope, that is where I have found my peace that the Bible says goes beyond our understanding. But even before that, even before you get to that point, lean in and keep that conversation open. And I think that you'll discover some beautiful things about yourself. I think you'll discover the better and best version of yourself on the other end of that. But if you lean away and you shut down that conversation, it's going to make you bitter. It will not make you better. It will make you bitter. It will not make you better. And I've seen that in 30-something years of ministry. I've seen that over and over and over. When marriages close the conversation, they become bitter and they become roommates, right? When athletes stop leaning in, they reach their peak and they won't get any better, right? Lean in, keep that conversation wide open. Even if you don't understand, seek to understand. So I'm sure there's a formula in there somewhere.
Ask for 3 keys, but we can take that formula.
Okay, good.
I mean,
I
he
like
said
it.
Lean in, lean in, lean in. Like,
Come
those are
on.
your
Lean in,
He
lean
didn't-
in, and lean in.
he
Give
didn't-
you a bonus. Ask
He
questions,
didn't
then
call
keep
him.
leading.
I needed him in the form of a question.
And he said hashtag bitter, not better. I mean, that's
good.
Come on.
Bitter, not better.
There you go. One of the things that I'm hearing from you, I've heard from many individuals who are going through the process. I've got some individuals that I love dearly and I'm coaching right now that are either on the other side of cancer or are going through a process. And you mentioned that the dignity is gone. And when I hear from any one of the clients, whether they're a church member or an executive, that the dignity is gone, it takes me back to, along with that dignity, it seems like their identity is at a loss. Can you speak to that? Was there ever a time? And how did you get your identity back if you did?
Yeah, well, so the angle that I would go on that question is that in many ways, dignity is an expression of our pride. And nobody wants to admit that because we like to say that we're dignified. We like to say that we act with dignity. And that it can be an expression of our pride. So when I say I lost all of my dignity, my wife saw sides of me that I never wanted her to see. My children saw weakness in me that I never wanted their father to demonstrate to them or to show them. I wasn't able to do all of the things that I was able to do with my staff and with those that I would coach around the country. I wasn't able to offer the things that I was able to offer. I wasn't able to be the things that I had been before. And so my dignity was lost. But those were the things, if I'm really honest, those are the things that helped shape my identity. And so when you lose those things, who are you?
There you go.
Right? If you take those things away, then who are you really? Well, the beautiful thing about that, and again, the scriptures talk about that, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. They're ready to receive the kingdom of God, right? When those things are torn away from you, however that happens, you're in a more ready position to receive something of sustenance, something that's more secure, that's more hopeful, that's more sustaining. Because, I come from a faith system that believes that our identity should be rooted in the person and personality of Christ, right? And that's what's sustaining, and that's how I believe that's how we were made. But what we do, and with the best intentions, all of us do this, is over the course of our lifetime, we get our degrees. I've got degrees. We have our accomplishment. I have accomplishments. We have a great family. I've got a great family. We've got all these things, and we're affirmed in those things. And that nobody's intending to do this, and I didn't intend to do this. But those things just kind of, over the last 50 years, have kind of shaped my identity. And now those things have been torn away from me. And so I'm laying there in a hospital bed all by myself with a gown that never fits. And I've got my ass kind of hanging out the backside of it.
Got it.
Free air conditioning.
Free air conditioning. And it's undignified.
Yeah.
And I've got a junk load of, drugs coming into me, and I'm dependent on everyone but myself. It's an opportunity to reshape your identity. Or you can get lost in that and become bitter, right? To me, there was an opportunity to become better, the better and best version of myself. So dignity and pride, to me, are very connected. And those things, and I believe pride is really the root of a lot of our identities. So
Yeah, for sure. And
would you say you have a different identity after
without
the
question,
process?
I was going to say,
or did you
That's where I
go
was
back and just double down and enhance on the one you previously had?
No, 100%.
You feel you're a different person today?
Yeah, and you talk to my staff, you talk to my kids, you talk to my wife, they would say he's a completely different person. Same personality, different person, if that makes sense.
Now,
and so
this is more of a question for Dr. Mario.
Uh-oh.
Because we've spoken a lot about this. So when this happens, and we'll use Paul's case, right? Or,
sure.
you go through suffering. We'll use the words here that we've been using. You go through the tragedy and the suffering. Now you're going to redefine your identity, right? Whether you do it through pride, ego, or however you're going to do it.
Or faith, yeah.
Is this now the identity that you're choosing? Is this choice, or is this more nature and nurture? Because what I've come to find is when you go through a struggle and and it happens to you as a child, there's still your environment molding that identity. But once it happens at, 39, 49, and then you decide, hey, I have to move on with my life, whatever the tragedy is. At that point, you're old enough to make a decision on what identity you choose next.
You make that decision. And when you're stripped of everything, as
What would
Paul,
you say are the biggest influences in that decision-making process?
they're going to vary depending on the individual. For me, in my belief system, it's faith and family, right? It's renewal of the mind. It's taking a real look at what's inside my soul. Because when everything is taken away, and I've never had cancer, delete, cancel.
We're free of that.
We're free of it. But we have lost a grandchild. And I recall the moments of darkness and loss based on the loss of our 2.5-year-old's grandson at that time. And it also had an impact in many different ways on different individual family members. Mario has his story. I have mine. My wife, if you ask the mother of the child, it made her a champion. She emerged out of that loss and grief. Was there moments of pain? Oh, absolutely. But I recall what inspired me in that moment of tragedy was how at the funeral where there was over 300 people at that wake, she pulled out the book that she would read to him every night and read him the final bedtime story. And that was inspirational. I mean, I could cry right now.
She read it as she read it every time before.
Yes.
As if he was still there.
Wow.
Yes.
So the whole house is breaking down.
Yeah.
And
That's
she's
heavy, man.
reading, not sobbing, just reading. As if he was right there, turning the pages,
mercy.
looking at, the scene.
And that was a choice.
wild.
That was a decision. Again, for her, I can speak for her, Erica Rodriguez. Shout out to my daughter. And
I know her.
yeah, for real. And she made a decision right then and there that she knew, obviously, the destiny of her son and didn't know the why, because at that point in time, we did not know what we knew 2 years after when she became pregnant again, that the child had XLA, which is an immune deficiency. We did not know that. So we didn't have a why. So there was a lot of blank stares and a lot of questions and a lot of people that were angry. But she gave us peace. At least that's the way I embraced that situation. So were we stripped? Absolutely. Could we have questioned God? Most definitely. Why did you take this child who was perfectly healthy other than having ear infections for 6 months? But what sustained us was our faith and not hopium, because there's a lot of people out there with hopium, Paul.
Yes, sir. Yes,
They're hoping, but
Smoking that hope.
exactly.
Yeah.
But they're taking no action. And what I love about Paul's story is the sustainability, that even though all those things happened, he stayed the course.
Let me ask you this, Paul. Let's have a man-to-man here. No, but just hearing some of that story and hearing some of the treatment, like the chemo, what would you say? Because obviously this is something, it's kind of heartbreaking, and I want to say there's something going on in the last 20, 30 years, because I'm 38, 39 years old now, you know what I mean?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Coach.
All this experience and wisdom. But seeing people get diseases and cancer at younger ages than ever and get, passing away from other things. And I'm not talking about things in the last 2 years, but things before that. Knowing that you've been there, meaning let's just give you a specific scenario. And you're walking into a room and there's somebody there going through the chemo treatment and they're lost, completely lost, and don't see. They're asking these questions. What would you say to them?
I would say lean in, continue to ask those questions. I mean, really, there's something about tragedy. There's something about suffering. There's something about loss that gives us a certain openness to anything that will help, right? And so I'm a diehard on my faith system. I've been through enough life to say that I do believe my faith is the answer. But I also know that I got there on my own pathway, right? And so I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to care for them. I'm going to feel it and not fix it. And just be the presence. In our faith system, we would say, hey, one of the best ways to minister to someone is just to be Christ to them, be Jesus to them, right? And so, in our faith system, we don't believe that Jesus is going to force his love on any person. If the lights are out, don't expect Jesus to turn the lights on. He may just sit in the dark with you and hold your hand. And so I think the best thing that we can do is just to feel it and just to be there with them. Now, do I have more of an empathetic posture with them? Of course, I've been there. But I've never lost a child or grandchild, right? So how can I possibly be there for them if I've not experienced that? It's the same formula. It's just to lean in, ask questions, and be present with them. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
I mean, I can role play pretty good. I can be like, but what do you mean lean in? Lean into what? I've lost everything. I mean, I'm being serious here.
Yeah.
What do you mean lean in? I am sick. I am throwing up. I was planning on doing this and going to trips, and now I'm planning to go to Rome before I die.
Yeah.
So what do you want me to lead into, Paul?
We're
playing the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, no, I got it. In fact, I even speak to that in the book. So thanks for the setup there. Nice.
Take it up today.
There's a chapter in there that says, "Is it okay to be angry with God?" Right? And the answer is yes. That's a short answer. The longer answer is God can handle it, and And 9 times out of 10, I do hear people say that they're pissed off at God. Why would he let this happen? If there is a God, why would he let this happen?
Right.
Right? And so why would I trust in a God that would let this happen? I've had those questions. I've asked those questions. I've asked those questions as recently as 2 years ago, right? Did I ever lose? I was devout in my doubt. What that means is that I wasn't completely pious and I wasn't completely 100% like, God said it, I believe it. That's not what devout in doubt means. Devout in doubt means I continued to lean into my doubt. The doubt was there. It was present. Whether I believe in God or not, I'm doubting that the universe is in control here. I'm doubting that this is going to be okay. And so what do I mean by that? I would literally just sit and just say, hey, it's okay to feel that you're not okay, right? It's okay to not be okay,
Right.
And it's okay. Just sit in that. Can I pray for you? Do you have any questions? And just keep that dialogue open. And I believe again in my faith system that God will open the door for different opportunities to share and to minister or to just be present.
Paul, question. I guess to piggyback on what Coach is asking.
More questions, Paul. What did you sign up for?
Yeah, let's go.
The victim mentality. How did you overcome that? Because at some point it had to happen, right? Like, poor me. That had to happen at some point. It happens to all of us.
Or why me, right?
Yeah, or why me, right? Well, no, because it's the why me is what you're creating, right? So if something bad happens and this is why it's happening to me, like, you get to create that. Why it's happening to me? Well, I didn't belong there. I've had bad things happen to me, and I sat there and I'm like, well, that wasn't meant for me to be. I wasn't supposed to be with that person. I wasn't supposed to be at that job. I wasn't supposed to be in that city. I wasn't supposed, right? Like I knew it. I didn't feel good with it. So now I'm in a better place. And so, but the victim mentality, at some point it does kick in. Poor me, right? Poor little old me. For you going through this process, did that occur? And if it did, when did you say, I'm not going down that road?
No mas.
Yeah, no. It's interesting because we talk about all dignity being broken apart, and it's kind of it's an opportunity for a fresh start to kind of develop some fresh identity that's more solid and secure. What's interesting about the victim mentality is that can quickly become your new identity.
Correct.
Right. And even this, I got so tired of people saying, hey, how you doing? Right. And I'm like, if somebody asked me that question one more time, my head's going to explode. Right. Because I'm tired. But what's interesting
that was my last question. Let me.
That'd be an epic end to the podcast. Oh my God, his head exploded. But what was interesting is I found myself almost craving that attention. Because now I'm the center of attention because everybody's wanting to know how Pastor Paul's doing. And so you got to be really careful that you don't lose the opportunity that you never wanted. I never wanted to have cancer, and I would never want it for anyone, not even for my worst enemy. There was an opportunity there for me to become the best and better version of myself. And I leaned into it, and I kept the conversation wide open. But then what happened is I had a new kind of attention. I had a new kind of affirmation. I write the book, and this is people are reading it all over the world right now. It's a new kind of affirmation. It's a new kind of attention, and you've got to continually check yourself, or you're going to wreck yourself. Right? You got to continually check yourself and not lose what it is that you've been given in this gift of this new and fresh identity. So the victim mentality, how did I protect myself from that? I literally told my wife, I said, I don't want to be the victim here, right? I don't want to be, you've got to name it, and you've got to give it to someone you trust to say, will you hold me accountable to this? I don't want to be a hypochondriac. I don't want to, every time I sneeze, feel like I'm losing my life. I don't want to almost indirectly crave this attention that, how are you doing? Hey, I got you a gift card. All these different things. You can almost get addicted to that, and it will shape your identity again. So I actually told my wife, don't allow me to fall into this victim mentality, right? I'm not a victim. I'm a victor. In my faith system, I am a victor. There is victory on the other side of this thing. And so I want to remain there, and I want to understand that the source and supply of my identity is not the fact that I wrote a book, is not the fact that I'm sick and I'm getting all this attention. It's not the fact that, I now have this new audience. The source and the supply of my peace is the Prince of Peace. In my faith system, that's what we believe. And that's where I run back to. Now, he's given me opportunities to write. He's given me opportunities to speak. He's given me an opportunity to look at life very differently. But those things that have been given to me are not the source and supply. And the victim mentality is actually something that you choose to receive, right? It's the world wants to give it to you.
Yes.
But you decide whether or not you want to receive it. And so I'm not sure if that's the answer you were expecting. I'm not sure if that's the question you were asking.
But I love how you said it, that you have to protect yourself from that.
Absolutely.
Right. I also love that you quoted Ice Cube. You got to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
There you go.
Just trying to stay relevant.
Your gym playlist is showing.
For real.
Yep. And probably my age is showing me. Yeah. Because
A little bit.
That's a little dated.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean,
Love it.
That makes sense. You have to be, awareness is everything.
Yes.
They say consciousness equals awareness. And you have to be aware of where you are before you move anywhere you want to go.
Yeah. The only way to, and again, uncertainty. The only way to get to a place of certainty is to travel through uncertainty. I've not found another way to get to certainty.
That's another book, man.
It's another book. It's another
dude.
book, but it's all of that. It's all of that wrapped up into it. So
Yeah, I like it. So, as you mentioned, readers can find out more about your journey by purchasing Devout in Doubt. And what's the website? Where can they purchase?
anywhere books are sold, you can certainly go to paulbaldwin.org,
Okay.
and you can get it through there. But it's anywhere books are sold. as
I
they
highly
say.
recommend it. Whether you're going through something or a friend, I've purchased some. I've sent some out. I highly encourage you because there is encouragement and there's sincerity. I like the transparency of your journey. So we appreciate you. And it's just an amazing journey that you've gone through. And you come out on the other side.
I let it all hang out, man.
Yeah, for real.
And in checking your background here, the proceeds of this book,
100% go to the American Cancer Society.
there you go.
That was another. I get a lot of ideas when I'm out running or walking, and the book title was one of them, and the other one was let's not keep any of this money, and that was just that was something I felt like we needed to do. In the scriptures, it talks about giving a first fruit back to God, and so this was my first fruit. So I went home and I told my wife, and she said, "What if you sell like 1 million copies?" I'm gonna be like, "That's gonna suck, and it's gonna be awesome at the same time," because we're committed to 100% of it going to research, and cancer is 600,000 cases of cancer in the United States alone. New cases a year. Mm-hmm. It is a pandemic, and it's an epidemic, and it's just so it's something that wasn't really attached to my heart before, is now, and so I'm hoping that we can sell 1 million copies and do some good with it. So.
Yeah. So your wife's name is Becky.
Yep.
And your children?
I've got 4 children. Got a 28-year-old. She's married with our first grandchild. Center of our universe. I've got a 26-year-old son and a 24-year-old daughter. She's married as well, and then a 21-year-old daughter.
So, as we come to a close, and I know we can go on for a long time, especially since we're only on page 3 of the whole book, as far as content's concerned. What message? What would you want to convey, and not just from the book itself, from a life learner? Through your journey, through Christ, through your journey, through meeting people, what message do you want to leave today?
Don't settle. Don't settle. I know it sounds almost cliche, but I believe that most of us will go through life and just settle for average. And I believe that the best and better version of every single human being on the planet is on the other end of tragedy, and we're all going to experience tragedy at some level. In some form, disappointment, frustration, that if you can learn a posture that embraces that, get the help that you need through coaching, through counseling, whatever means you need to really discover who you are and who you're meant to be, I think that you will live a life that you never thought was possible. I just believe that with everything. But you may have to go through some rough trails to get there. So don't settle. Don't settle.
Lean in and don't settle. This is our guest has been Paul Baldwin. Oh my goodness. This has been an amazing opportunity. Thank you so much for the learnings. I've taken a lot of notes myself.
Good,
Coach.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll see you next time.